With all that talk of, what you say echoes through eternity, I guess I'm kind of humbled to think that, some people do listen to me, and it's super thrilled because, spoiler alert, my intention and my contention is that I can prove by the end of this video that not only as I've been teaching, Armageddon is over, that coming race war that everybody in the back of their mind has been worried about since the 60s, well, that's over too. And that happened during a period of the rise of fascism. And I believe I know and can prove that Marcus Garvey was the Moses that led them. And when everybody wonders, why didn't they just go back to Africa like they were, they tried. They really did try. And before, I've been working on praying, trying to get an intro on this for like 2.5 hours and 3 different pages. I actually wrote a haiku poem of 4 stanzas as an intro, and just I can't get to it, but I just that's part of the deal of the way the Lord moves. This is going to be a video that not only proves what I said, is going to prove that everything is God's timing. And the hand that you see reaching for this stone is one of the 4 people that's walked with me since I've called this the throne stone. And I would, as of last October, I would not have made all of the discoveries that I made if it wasn't for him. And, my daughter, she came out, she was willing to walk with me there. He couldn't find my address. I'm not that easy to get a hold of. I don't ask for money. I've never said this or that. He taught me. He sent me a check for $1,000, and I don't trust that kind of thing. I didn't know what to do. Everything was here and there, and he tried to, it was like explaining to him how I can't use banks anymore and everything else that I'll probably have to get back into some more and stuff. He drove here and saved my ministry, and also told me in a paraphrase, hey, Mr. Expounder of the scriptures, what does it mean? Don't muzzle the ox when you're threshing the field and plowing. It's that people do support ministers, and that I had kind of hindered him in what he was called to do. And he's a guy that when he found out about flat earth, he didn't beat around the bush. He's been dropped, he's like, to the school board, this is what we believe now. He's had kids in this school, I guess, all their life. And he's a man that takes a stand. I like that. I just recently had contact with another man, providentially, who has also helped me, once again, save the ministry financially, or actually I couldn't say it was save the ministry type, but like equal with what Randy did. But what it did was, it was like function like a normal human, here's just for no reason, take care of your comforts. And he talked to me about when he was in, or, at what at the time he thought was the South Pole, and some of the stories there that motivated me right at a time when you knew I was about to, and have told you, I had another, fractal out experience with the Bible, where it wasn't vision, trance, or anything like that. It was just all of a sudden, wow, things came together. And I think I'll be able to show you how But first, I need to reestablish, my whistleblower status. I do not want the government to hurt me anymore, or my son, or my family. And it all goes back to the Christian liberty thing, and I found out more about the John Birch Society and how we were set up and run by the CIA to start the homeschool movement and everything else. And they sold us the old Arlington Heights Cardinals High School after they had spent $2 million on carpeting the year before, and just all kinds of outlandish extravagance expenses that still people are in uproar about in Arlington Heights because of their beloved Cardinals and football team were something special to a lot of them. But anyway, we needed the building, so they gave it to us for $1.5 million plus an extra $10,000. And all of these providential states, and then, oh no, there's a thing, they passed a law, it's going to be asbestos. The same thing that tied in much later, around the year 2000, with why, speculation is we can't have this building, but it's all a long con. So yes, to be wise as a fox and understand, oh, that's how they do it, that's what I've been trying to do. So did I start blowing the whistle? Have I had contact? Have they, yes, everything, yes, left, repented, was a part of removing asbestos in, the 86, 88 AHERA laws. And so when I finally, went out on my own, kicked out of my house, my own wife trying to used her sister, who I was using as a lawyer, to try to trick me into signing divorce papers that had left off 3 pensions, and then fought me tooth and nail. I realized that I was on my own, so I went with the plan that I had said, if I'm right about this, I have to wait 15 years, pay off my house, see how they react, and then I'll know. Okay, now I knew. The asbestos, everything, they're still all in on it. They're still all working for it. So I went and got an asbestos license. And because of that, I didn't even know about to study the megaliths and the pattern of this mountain and tunnels that you see. But you still can't tell where this is. Is there any guess? Last chance. Yeah, now you might say, wait a minute, what is this? That's NORAD. That's Cheyenne Mountain. I went and got, and I've shown it before, an administrator's license to do asbestos. I was good at it, and I worked my way up to, it worked at the, Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. They have another Air Force base there. Cleared to go on there, was doing fine. Was here to do asbestos abatement. And I thought I had a better picture. Okay, yeah. And this is the truck of the company I worked for. The man driving it, his name's Duke. This is me doing these things for a reason, to prove my case in court when these guys come for me now, because I've been set up. I won my first constitutional case in Colorado Springs. I wasn't, you live and learn. You don't know all their tricks. I won, but they just dismissed the case. Misspelled my name so the warrant would stay on my, set me up to go to jail, be lose my money, be branded as a drug user and everything else. But the Lord keeps his own, and now I have a new case going where I'll be able to bring this in, a case against the VA. I've proven and know all the underhanded things that go on there in Grand Junction and now in Montrose. I've documented it all this time. And there still is only needing to get people on board, because I was just looking at the Drudge Report today, and they had a article that they linked to articles on that, and this one was linking to something I think in the Wall Street Journal about psychiatrists and doctors still have the power to just throw somebody in jail, and in particular cases when they deem it necessary, give electric shock therapy. And they gave documentation on that recently, and this was in Drudge Reports as of yesterday. 500 times in 5 years he received electric shock therapy. This is supposed to be 2020 and things are getting better. Not for me. It's only 4 years ago people in the VA in Arizona were dying on separate lists, and it took the employees to buy a billboard and whistleblow before that was acknowledged. I feel I'm still on a list. I've never been able to say that because now they're going to say, well, he's just paranoid. And nobody's going to care unless I can get some people to care. So that's NORAD. That's Cheyenne. I did it. I did it to prove my case, to keep working on that. I sold out like a money-grubbing whore too, but when I woke up, I left and was trying to, hey, we're all going to be judged here. What is the throne stone? It was one of the first things that, how big can the giants be? Is there a reason for every crack, what I call a break point in the cleavage? Every hole, can it be, a place to buy a tendon? That's a seat. That's smoothed out. I got out my anatomy books and chased, where could they all be? I think that's a semi-helix. It's not one that is very easy, but it's not rubbed. It wasn't fashioned. It was in a body, and I proved it. And we'll start the reading now. So don't you hate it when people say, this is going to hurt you a lot more than it hurts me? Oh wait, we don't hear it that way. That's not the way we're trained to say it. We have common memories that have been recently perfected and supplied by the suppliers of history. That's why we know it is. This is going to hurt me a lot more than it hurts you. And how you handle that is going to be the key to how you handle the rest of it. If you don't have any point of reference where you can emphasize that when somebody has to, say, for example, spank a child, that could really hurt them, then you don't understand people like me that before I would correct somebody and spank one of my children, I would cry for a half hour and explain why I had to do it, made sure they understood. But it really can hurt someone, and this gives me no joy to bring these things out. So I'm going to do some reading here. This is going to hurt me a lot more than it hurts you. We have common memories recently perfected and supplied by suppliers of history, also known as people who win wars. But possibly should have survived war. Well, how do we know who possibly should have, or who did, or who could? So the people that maybe they won the war, or maybe they just survived, like barely. But how do people survive a war? There's always going to be more winners than losers. That's pretty obvious. The rest are going to be dead. Hey, did I just crash my picture thing? All right, we can keep going now. So we'll pick it up with, how do people survive war? Well, we read in the Bible that, there's more winners than losers. People will survive the war by being on the winning side. They also, it says that they keep the very young, and they keep the skilled people, merchants, teachers. Bible says you're going to be skilled or you're going to be killed. That's what that says. But there also could be a chance that there's just a remnant left over, and basically holding on with, what can we do? Can we cover things up? If they could, would they? It looks like, they could do some building. Things were built. They found, there's pictures of the past, but what can we really trust? What can we really trust? You could also, they would let you survive if you could be a useful tool, or if they were going to deceive you into thinking that you were going to be a big part of everything. But mysteries just are everywhere. If you could act, if you could write, if you were a mighty man, and you could go into the army and be a stud or a breeder, maybe that'd be nice too. But we do know that at some point, the winners, rulers, survivors, somebody is going to be able to rewrite history and take it where they want it to go. They'll say, look at our massive technology. And for years, people would say, built on the foundations of others, as usual. And we might find out that the people that, where the mist went up from the waters, it might have been the Lord would set the foundations for all these things. Who would have all of us really trust their lives or salvation? Their lives or salvation. Trusted to people who spend our tax money. If that was your list, okay, who can I trust? I want somebody I can trust my life and my salvation on. Oh, I'm thinking of the IRS, because is that what jumped into your mind? They're going to be fair. Oh, sure. Now you trust them, or have we kind of learned our lesson? Do some hard-earned tax money, does it get wasted? It does. And people get real. In between the wars, did all races of all kinds, and these people, did they have the first African army in the United States, founded by Marcus Garvey? And were they paying their taxes? Their uniforms matched everybody else's? Well, absolutely. It does look like they did. You don't have to trust me. They quiet conspiracy believers live in a web of destiny, not knowing that here Columbia is just sewing a Gordian knot, untying the knot of the heart. Oh, we'll be getting into Africa. That we will. But since the 1960s, really, that's all we know. They've been saying there's no conspiracies, but it turns out that everything that we've heard about from the 60s from the Gulf of Tonkin to Photoshops to nobody's going to sign up and say that for $30 you can spit in my face. Unless it's those demon pornography people, they probably would do it. So when this is going to hurt you more than it hurts me, if you hear that as something else and it becomes in your mind like a lot of today's generation, oh, you're going to hurt me? Well, then they change that into, now I know you hate me. It wasn't my fault. I didn't know the law. It's stupid, Dad. It was just a fad. You're old and you don't know anything. If you did, you knew it was rad. When I said that you're bad, it's cool when I called you a tool. And by the way, you're the best if I call you sick mofo. And then don't do that double pump, nasty, filthy, fat bitches got. Well, no, that's not cussing when you say fat, because fat would be the objective. Bitches, sometimes they don't, that gets why, but if you spell it P-H-A-T and that could be a lot of different things, but I think the safe one is, what is that, pretty, hot, and tasty. This is opposite world. Those men knew it. I knew it. We live in a world where somebody that has never accomplished anything can walk up to you and be like, hey, you think you're better than me? Huh? What happens when people make promises? Marcus Garvey made promises that he was going to be the new Moses. And he was going to lead his people out. Trials notwithstanding, they went and did it. They had what we're going to go over is called a new renaissance. And they had the money to pay for it up front. And then somebody pulled a stunt. That's right, Pan-Africanism. They said, we'll help you raise the money. You guys want to leave? We want you to leave. It's all fine. And then you'll find out that once they're on the ships and over there, and the money's in the banks and they have all of the transactions, a corporation swooped in and said they want that land and they'll pay more. And the blacks were hung out to dry. And I'm going to ask you, when we see the size of the cities and everything in our recent past and wonder, where did everybody go? You know that we've basically been asking, how did this end up a white country? And the Lord, I feel through providence, has shown me that, like I've been saying a long time, the Lord gave me a 3D vision of the stones, and I've proven it. And I've also been held back. I feel like I should, that I don't feel like I should, but I feel like I do have as the number of subscribers that I have, because I say that I believe that at some point in history that they were throwing people and making metal out of them, or trying to get the metal out and then just spreading them by the railroad track, because I've shown things I've collected by the railroad track that they just say are, cinder rocks, that slag rock, broken them off, and it is not. It's body parts. Some gemstones and some wood, hay, and stubble, just like the regular rocks. And I know that they're going to say I'm crazy. That's why I put it out, and there are people all over the world going, hey, I think I found this, I found that. And now everybody knows I've documented it this time, because I'm not going down as just crazy without saying, well, then there's a doctor in New England. There's a chiropractor in Spain that does nephorensics. And they want to argue with you that I'm not crazy. They just want to say, then test it and let's see. Okay, so that's where we're at. How the corporation stopped the Black Moses. All of that, just to get to the man who is famous for, the walking liberty, Ben Franklin, or, on the $50 he designed this. You hold on to your hats, because this is something that you have just been waiting for. What's that doing that for? Doesn't that figure this is supposed to play? Huh. I really feel like I should just stick with the order, so we're going to go with that.
Pictures up.
Pictures up.
Pictures up. Let's roll sound. Rolling.
Rolling.
Sound speed.
Camera speed 2. I'll show. Take 2. Mark.
Oh, brother. Well, I'm not going to keep going like that. All right, I'll just finish that up myself. When it starts getting like that, that's usually as my computer and Google OneDrive is usually having a war over. I should get more drive space, and I have to go back and delete some things. So welcome to Flat Earth Nation. It is a Flat Earth Nation. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. Welcome to this historic night. The race war, like Armageddon, is over. And what's going on and covering it up is a great big hoax. Everything is over. Marcus Garvey had a fascist army. I'm going to take you there so we'll see it. Where did it go? Well, I think it went beside the railroad tracks. I've shown the parts. Put your hands in your hair. Pull them back. Look in the air. If ever there was a time to despair, watch out. Look in. Ontologically is prime philosophy for a reason. This has and will continue to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Black traveling by ship. Ships are slave galleries, prisons. Not the promised land, but the frying pan. Black and brown melt down for metal. The history of mud, flood, and body parts, railroad slags. Something happened in our past. I know the body parts. I proved it. Now the Bible is proving it too. I know. We're busy. But I've been wise like a fox. This isn't my first time. I've been ready to go to court when they pick me up. I have been turning the other cheek. What does that mean? Well, we're going to look into that word, and you're going to see that turning the cheek means getting pummeled repeatedly and then standing back up like Paul, going back in and presenting the gospel again and saying, I don't think you understand. You're commanded to repent and be baptized in the name of Jesus, or whatever the Spirit was telling him at this or that time. How were you seeing the Bible about turning the other cheek? Was it going to be hard for you? Well, let's talk about yesterday's video when I named September 7th, 2017, and showed you that on that date when they did a time ceremony, first light ceremony it was on that day and at that time. I said, well, I'm led by the Spirit. Let's see what else happened that day. Well, that was the day that they announced that Equifax lost 149,000. They got hacked, the biggest hack ever. It was by China. That showed back up in the news after I posted that video. The connection to that is that RT News broke like 6 hours ago that the United States has been the pot calling the kettle black, and that every encryption voting machine, encrypted, that software that you buy to, I'm sending encrypted email, it is all hacked by the CIA, much worse than the shills have been let out. The Edward and then WikiLeaks and things like that. It's all calling the kettle black. It's still going on. So once again, hold on to your hats. Get ready to scream like the man on the bridge in the Edvard Munch famous common memory, The Scream.
Millions of dollars, selling to over 120 countries. But, and this is a huge but, according to a new report in the Washington Post, it was secretly owned by the CIA and West German intelligence. And the two agencies were able to easily get into these messages to track events such as the Iran hostage crisis and the assassination of South American leaders. So for more on this story, we dig in and bring in investigative journalist Ben Swan. Talk about a...
Now, watch, they even flash my last name. But out of all the stocks and things like that they could have been showing, I think they're doing it to say, wow, we should kind of take this serious.
Spy novel. I feel like we're actually coming out with this, and the details are becoming even more apart. We're finding out more about it. But I do have to ask, from an American standpoint, what is this genius strategy in regards to finding out what other countries were doing, especially those our adversaries? And in some situations, did this not almost have a positive effect that we had this intelligence?
Well, okay, so let's talk about the positive of it. I think there certainly, if you believe in the government apparatus that spies and says more intelligence is better, which I think most people would agree with, more intelligence, good intelligence is better. It's an interesting story of how they did this. They essentially had these machines that were built, as you said, by a Swiss company. A guy named Boris Hagelin actually created this after World War II. He created encryption machines that U.S. soldiers could actually attach to their bodies and carry around. Well, he expanded that company, and that's when West German intelligence and the CIA got involved in it. And by the 1970s and 80s, that was kind of the heyday of this. They were being used by countries all over the world, and massive amounts of intelligence were coming in. And essentially, the machines were set up in a way that would allow them to be easily deciphered by the U.S. And what's really amazing about this is most of the employees of this company did not know that the CIA was involved. They did not know there were government ties or intelligence ties, including, and this is kind of the scary part, we can talk about some of the negatives, but the salesmen who are going around the world selling this stuff. There's a story of one salesman, 51 years old, he was the #1 salesman. He was actually detained at one point in Iran. He was held, may have been tortured when he was in Iran. Eventually, Crypto AG had to pay $1 million to get him out, but what's interesting is it was the Germans who paid it, not the CIA, because they said, well, the U.S. has a policy against paying for hostages, but the guy didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know he was working for the CIA. He thought he was selling a legitimate product, and he wasn't.
Well, and so...
All right, that's my story. That's my whistleblowing story. I didn't know either. And I've told you before, Dr. Lindstrom has told me that 40,000 guns underneath the pulpit of the church on Camp McDonald Road for Ian Smith, the CIA, John Birch Society. It's all there. I didn't know. I'm trying to do the right thing here. All this stuff, Russia, it's turning around. Look, it's got my name up here twice. I couldn't plan this. I'm a warehouse manager. I'm a volleyball coach, but I'm a Christian, and that's how this happened. If you don't want to believe that, come up with a better explanation.
Did they find out that this was obviously a CIA, that this equipment was being used to spy on them before even we, the American people, knew that we had this kind of operation going on?
No, apparently this part of what's happened here. There were times in history when certain things would happen that would tip off governments. For instance,
that they knew somebody was listening in
right,
somewhere
when
to
that
have
disco
this type
bombing
of
happened from Muammar
Right.
Gaddafi. Remember that? And Reagan gave a speech, and he gave a lot of details in that speech about what the United States knew. Well, when that happened, the Iranians said, and the Libyans said, wait a minute. They know something, right? And so what would happen is they would look at these machines and begin to question them. The U.S. went out and recruited specific people who were experts in the field and paid them a lot of money to essentially vouch for this. And what's also interesting is there were a number of different employees, again, who didn't know this was going on, who were hired over the years to actually, they started working as engineers to fix the machines. They were finding flaws in it and say, wait a minute, this is easy to decipher. This is easy to break. And
I think you used an interesting term. That is interesting.
so they would either lose their jobs or they would get demoted to prevent them from being able to alter the machine. So it's a very messy story in terms of those individuals and how this kind of played out for them.
Well, and the fact that the CIA denied or said we don't pay for terrorists even or in exchange for hostages, in exchange when they were the ones who created the situation in the first place.
And put this guy into it without him knowing.
Without him knowing that side, it kind of makes you wonder. But, you know, where was this transparency in this company? You would think any sort of security firm, even if it was Swiss, where was the international community looking in at this company going, you're selling all of this,
right.
Let's make sure it's legitimate? Well,
here's what's interesting. Apparently there was a big rift between the West Germans and the U.S. in terms of how this was being used, because the West Germans had a problem with the fact that the U.S. Wanted to spy on everyone, whether they were...
That kind of, doesn't that hurt? The West Germans still had a conscience. They must have still remembered that they have to let their conscience and the scriptures be their guide.
Allies or not. And so, you know, in 1981, their main clients were Saudi Arabia, Italy, Indonesia, Iraq, Libya, Jordan, and South Korea. But the West Germans said, wait a minute, why are we spying on, for instance, members of NATO, like Spain and Greece, Italy, and Turkey? So they were frustrated with that. What's interesting is eventually when they parted ways, the West Germans got out of this business. They were fearful in doing so that they would suddenly be spied upon. Well, we know that did happen with the NSA spying when the German Chancellor Angela Merkel had her cell phone tapped by the United States, and they were looking at that. So there was a frustration on the West German part, apparently, that the U.S. basically saw that they had no friends when it came to intelligence and that everone was an enemy.
Well, I want to bring this to the present because right now you do have the United States accusing companies like Huawei,
right.
And you've got a.
But I wonder why they didn't like us. I wonder why.
A company, an internet company out of Russia. You have another
Kaspersky,
one,
yeah.
Kaspersky, that's talking about it. And the reason why this is happening is because we set the standard for it. So we're going, we know we do it. So therefore, we're pretty much assuming you're going to do it too.
To be honest with you, I think that's the best case the United States could make against a company like Huawei or Kaspersky Labs would be to actually get up and say, we've been spying on everyone around the world for years. We know how it's done. We've been the best at it. And this is why we believe that we're being spied on. I think if they would say that and be honest, look, everyone knows that the U.S. is spying. So why not make that case?
Well, where is the outcry on this? You know, we talk about
Yeah, that's going to happen. Sure.
retaliation. We put tariffs. We put all of these other sort of sanctions on other countries.
Yeah.
When we find out they do things, supposedly, you know, send memes from one country into the U.S.
Yes.
There's outcry. What about outcry about setting the standard and we're doing it?
Isn't that a great example? Because she's referencing back to that one frog meme. And like, oh, everybody's outraged, and watch out, Russia's trying to influence us. And in the meantime, oh my goodness.
Ourselves. We have a company with a huge building down the street with the logo right in front of it, boldly saying, we're spying on you.
Yeah. You know, what's so interesting about that, and you make a great point, when we hear about Russian interference and we hear about election interference and all this talk about Facebook ads being bought and you're interfering, and we know that the U.S. was spying and manipulating these countries. And there is one other point here, and I think this is an important one. What did the United States know over the course of these many decades? And then either do or not do about political assassinations, ethnic cleansing, human rights abuses. They were aware, our intelligence community was aware of so many things happening in these countries. And in many cases, I think the question has to be asked, what did they allow to continue to happen? because they wanted to protect the fact that they were able to spy. And when you do that, then you have to ask the question, well, what is spying worth anyways? If you're going to allow genocides to take place, if you're going to allow human rights abuses to take place, and you're going to ignore all of that just for the sake of having information, then maybe spying isn't really worth it anyways.
And then the do this to our adversaries, those on the outside, are they willing to do it to our own citizens? And I think that is the real, I think that's the real discovery. And I think it's naive to think that this isn't still going on, maybe just under another type of program.
In a more high-tech way,
Exactly. Thank you, Ben, for covering.
All right, this little clip has been up for a while. I hope it plays. Listen to what he compares. Well, just listen to it.
How could they do such a thing?
Important lesson for sure.
Yeah.
That you need to get across.
People don't forget. It's like the Holocaust. We should never forget. We should never forget. I can't understand how a group of educated people, the Germans, these people went to the opera. They took their kids to Sunday school. They went on picnics. These are not Mongolians. These were educated people. How could they do such a thing? They went on picnics. These are not Mongolians. These were educated people. Sunday school. They went on picnics. These are not Mongolians. These were educated people.
I'm not going to pretend I'm surprised that when they pick some of these old veterans out to all of a sudden remember what heroes they were during the Omaha beach invasion, that just casually in there, you know, the white power message. And if you don't think that is that these people were educated, they went to Sunday school, how can they do it? It's not like they're Mongolians, Tartarians, Fu Manchus. You're messing with the mob. You know, and we got, I got another clip here, I guess, with Andrew Breitbart and how he sets up the, you know, the right, which I fell into because they had it either you understand pro-life and you're going to be on the right, and if not, it's going to be there. The Hegelian dialectic. So you closed your eyes to when your guys were, you know, proven bad because you're pro-life. And they prop up these people, and it's like, okay, they'll get their news here, they'll get their news here. Let's just listen to some of what the late Andrew Breitbart had to say. And this was a show made to get out that message.
Is the politics of Hollywood, which he views as a problem and which he intends to correct. Segment 1, Insanity Chic. Andrew Breitbart, I'm quoting you, in a newspaper interview he gave last year discussing the people who run Hollywood. Quote. Yes, quote. I'm telling you, they're uninteresting.
That's all acting.
They're really, really not good people, and I'm willing to say that on the record. Close quote. Is there any of that you regret?
No.
What makes them really, really not good people?
Well, I'm not saying the entirety, but the ones who have controlled Hollywood for the last 40 years. That quote could be attributed to the campus left as well. It could be attributed to people who are in charge in Venezuela right now. Anywhere where the left gets control, you start to see political correctness run amok. You start seeing dissenting views quashed.
Zero creativity, always the same thing that they've used since the 1840s, communism, socialism, capitalism. What are we going to be? It's those guys or it's us. And now it's Republicans or Democrats. It's come down to that. They're two heads on the same snake.
They use projection. Right before they do so, they start attacking the people that they're about to go after of being guilty of the very things that they do. That's why the dissent is patriotic meme was so hysterical during the 2000, during Bush's presidency, because whenever I would ask any of these people, can you name one person who has attempted to quash your dissent? And they would usually say...
The liberals.
The liberals would say that they couldn't come up with any individuals. They'd just say, you've got to be crazy. It's everywhere. Well, exactly where is that?
Well, you know what I think is funny? I think it's funny that we cried and cried and cried like, oh, they're interfering with our elections. Oh, they're doing this and that. Oh, they're doing this and that. And in the meantime, that's all we've ever done is send people over to, like Pinochet, Venezuela. That's a crime. Angola, El Salvador, Panama, Nicaragua. I'm sorry if I'm leaving some out. There were just atrocities everywhere by United Fruit Corporation, owned by the Eisenhowers and the Dulleses, the people who own the CIA. It was always about making money for this crew. And useful tools like this guy can, a true believer. I was a believer too. I probably would have said the same things. But when it came down to like, oh my goodness, we're ripping off people, we're stealing money from our brothers, and Lord, it's not being right, I would speak out too. When he found out about the underage pedophilia and stuff like that, oh, that's too much. He's gone. But in the meantime, he was right there to prop up Rush Limbaugh, and who is another construct being ruled by his blackmail. Let's Andrew tell it.
The first thing that this president did, that the President Obama did, was isolate Rush Limbaugh, who was a symbol of a coalescing anti-Obama sentiment, and he isolated him, and the mainstream media and Hollywood, completely got behind this. That to me was chilling. That the Bill Maher's of the world, the Joy Behar's of the world, the entirety of MSNBC, all went after Rush Limbaugh. He hadn't said anything at that moment in time that was anything that was outrageous at all, especially compared to what had been said for the 8 previous years.
He was guilty only of a political crime. He disagreed with them and said so vividly.
Right.
And that was it. Listen, historical question. Golden age of Hollywood, which it wasn't all that long ago. We measure it in decades, not centuries after all. Producers, Jack Warner of Warner Brothers was a Republican. Directors, Frank Capra, immigrant from Sicily, a Republican and a conservative. He produces movies such as It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. The town in those days produced movie after movie after movie that was fundamentally affirming about American life, fundamentally affectionate even about American life. How did Hollywood go from Republican David Selznick, who produced Gone with the Wind, to liberal David Geffen? What?
That's my job. I'll tell you why that happened. It's because, well, let's use the example of that. If it was in Germany and they were making movies about how great Germany is, what's the name of that girl that their greatest director, like the pan shot, the using the small tracks and a rolling camera, all innovation was hers. Well, we don't show her videos because that's just propaganda. It made them look good. That's why when the Republicans were in charge, they wanted everybody to go, yeah, white power, America's doing great, we're the best, rock on. Of course, they do things that could be viewed as, by some people, propaganda. So you can cross your hands, but none of this is going down by accident, Mr. Man.
Happened.
Well, 2 things. The studio system ended, and now the celebrities are in charge.
Okay, explain both of those. Studio system ended. What bearing did that have on the politics?
Well, there were actors have always been held in low regard by society, and the businessmen who ran the studio.
And they still should be held in low regard.
Studios, cleaned up after their messes around town. I mean, that's sort of the L.A. Confidential movie. That changed in the 1960s to a great extent. But I would attribute the majority of this to the Cultural Revolution in the late 1960s, and that at the end part of John Wayne's career, he no longer had the swagger. He was 60-something years old. The movies were no longer original. They were doing the same hackneyed thing over and over and over.
Right.
And simultaneously, there's a youth revolution going on in the country. And while the left was never able to take over the White House, while George McGovern was not able to be victorious, Hollywood was taken over by the left, and they've never relinquished it. And in fact, I would argue that the right has abdicated its place in Hollywood because they were told that you're not wanted here anymore, and they never fought for it. So I don't know who I have more contempt for, the left for its totalitarian behavior towards those that disagree with them, or the right, the conservative movement, for just allowing for it to happen and not to fight back.
Segment 2 is what difference does it?
All right, we're going to be wrapping up with Andrew Breitbart. He's going to, just finish up with saying, Hollywood's bad because, even, making movies where it's always the American corporations that are bad and this and that. Well, what if they were? What if they were the bad guys? And what if this, like we're not supposed to trust anybody, try all things. We'll see. This video is not over. There will be a second mile, and it is about to get shocking.
There's an there's the bad guy in the movie is a repressed military guy who has who in one subliminal scene has a little cross on, his lapel, and
or the James Bond, what's his name, Daniel Craig, the new Bond?
Yeah.
The second Bond movie, which I rented the other evening. The bad guy, it's unbelievable.
Right. Well, it's
the
nonstop.
Americans are trying to take over Bolivia.
There are two, look, you cannot get a film produced now that has Islamist terrorists. You can get movies produced. In fact, you see them all over the place in which people of traditional values or corporations, American corporations, are the bad guys. And I know people within the system who tell me how this plays out. One thing I've been able to find out over the last 10 years is more money now comes from foreign box office, 65% to 35%. That wasn't always the case.
You make most of your money on your foreign releases.
So you're catering to the foreign audience, and so we may have an invested we may have an investment against radical Islam, but the rest of the world wants to kind of keep at bay and doesn't want to take them on, doesn't want to foment rage against that community.
Domestic.
We have. They'll just say he was a electrifying orator, Marcus Garvey. Melded all these people, but, it's not if he ever launched the Black Star Line. That's a recent enough, history where we know that happened. And it did capture the imaginations. They had the money, millions. By 1920, his group had hundreds of divisions. And the international conventions, the Negro world. Listen to what it says. During the 1920s, the 6-block radius surrounding 135th Street and Lenox Avenue contained their international headquarters. That's a 6-block radius. That's like what saying is the green zone in Iraq, It's all practically a little small city where, it's the safe zone. That sounds like their big place, 6 square blocks or 6-block radius. Their shops, storefronts, factories. We know that a couple of towns, that we've studied, the whole town got half, and then they just killed everybody. 3,000 lynchings is going to turn out to be a nothing. This was it. This is the big cover-up. This is what they were hiding. This was a worldwide thing. They were ready to go. And then it didn't happen. Why? Where did the people go? Well, they're spread out on the railroad tracks, and it just gets more scary all the time. And it's not fear porn, it's fear reality. So we understand that their deal is from Muhammad, right? Don't take only, we're afraid that if there's images of Muhammad and they're found around places, people out of temptation might start praying to him instead of Allah because, well, that's just how people think about Allah. I don't know if I mentioned that one or not. But here's some pretty famous philosophers. And this is Muhammad. I always said there's got to be, there's no way that people could go throughout history without putting up pictures of Muhammad. And that's Muhammad. And I guess I have the tacit approval from the United States government to show it because it's on a government building. Yeah. During my thing about Marcus Garvey, I stumbled on this. I'm blown away. It's got to just shrink this back down. Let you know I'm not kidding you here. This is the courtroom frieze from the north or south and north walls from the Supreme Court of the United States. This is how they explain it. Because since I've been telling people, that part of the hoax, the big hoax, is that there was ever a Muhammad and ever really the Islam religion. It was made up to be a foil against the Judaism that was planned at, now we find out, the same time they were planning the dividing up of Africa around 1885. They had I think it was 1890 at one of the world fairs, convention cities, the white cities. They brought them all together there for religions, and it was decided that they needed to return the Jews to the Holy Land. And that was another reason that World War I was started, because that's kind of like Africa where they are. And so these are the courtroom friezes. Cass Gilbert, somebody was the architect of the building, and Adolf Weinman, the famous and respected Beaux Art sculptor, the man who made the famous Walking Liberty half dollar. They got the best of the best to work on it because, and whenever you talk to, I was going to finish that story. When you're talking to Muslim people, and I'm going like, well, I don't even think he existed. Well, the United States government has recognized Muhammad as a great prophet. And I'm always like, where? They won't tell you, but it's like, it's in the thing in 1936. It's this frieze they're talking about. Yeah, they recognize him. There's his picture. You guys are, and so this thing has an article. I think we're going to go back and look at one where there's like they're mad about it, but they don't know what to do about it. They don't want to have to. What if Charlemagne gets hit? Are we on the north or south? So they're saying, well, we could sandblast it, but what if Charlemagne or the other guy gets hit? And in case you don't know it, he's holding a sword in his right hand and the Koran in his left hand, and that is supposed to be a major faux pas. Oh my. Yeah, so they even admit that when you take the tour, they list all of the great philosophers and put Muhammad up there, the prophet of Islam. It's all part of this story. He is depicted holding the Quran. The Quran provides the primary source of Islamic law. Prophet Muhammad's teachings explain and implement Quranic principles. The figure above is a well-intentioned attempt by the sculptor, Adolf Weinman, to honor Muhammad. And it bears no resemblance to Muhammad. Muslims generally have a strong aversion to sculptured or pictured representations of their prophet. Yeah, tell that to the cartoonists that got killed. But as we'll see, the Muslims know that this is there, and this is from the office of the Curator, the Supreme Court of the United States. All of these are their photos from the collection of our court that has no problem showing the Prophet Muhammad holding the Quran in his left hand. That's supposed to be what he wipes his butt with. No respect. I tell you, they get no respect. So they say here that they've been lodging complaints readily, knowing that the faithful wouldn't recognize the image, but, so they are making excuses. That's not supposed to matter. It's just that this guy is so famous, they don't want to mess up his, he's a famous sculptor. He did that famous dime. It's supposed to be the most beautiful sculpture in the world. And sorry, you made up religion. They don't want to cut him out. Well, they understood that the architect had authority in the matter and he could have said no. But he did it. He gave 18 lawgivers on the east, while the east and west have allegorical themes. At least 7 of the figures besides Muhammad carry swords. And he was so celebrated. Why are they going to, just keep yapping? Muslims, that's the way they feel. You're being used to be, antagonistic to the Jews. Like either one of them could withstand the zeitgeist lens put upon them when they'll use false quotes, outright lies, and everything else. They wouldn't need to do that against the current Jews or the Muslims over there fighting. There's nothing from the 8th through 10th century that confirms there was ever, a Muhammad, much less a religion like that in Mecca. Mecca's always had that same cube there being worshipped for at least, and this is the corrected timeline, at least 1,500 years, not the 2,500 years. They've always been going to Mecca. They have what they call mosques that they're not facing to the right direction. Uh-oh. It's a joke. And the Muslim community has known about it since, when was this thing here? And I'm going to get off of it. 1998? Anyway, I had to go to the Wayback Machine. This is 1997, Washington Post. They knew about it. They know about it. It's this guy who did it. The Mercury Dime Boy. He did, he's one of these workhorses. Go to Rosicrucian, Columbia, Liberty worshiper. He's their boy. He did everything. And it looks like they mentioned almost everything except what I just showed you. Who knows what they'll find when they dig everywhere else. They sure like to make sure that no children watch these. With all the, they can't get enough showing naked boobs. And now we know why those statues are all over here. They love it. They absolutely love it. Look at the, who knows what hidden things in there. Well, we know he designed the Penn Station. Sure he did not. It's all fake. That's one of the big ones right there, man. I don't think that's like 6 city blocks too. Foundations that go down 200 feet. Yeah, this guy here, he gets credit for all of these things. He probably did some of them. I'm pretty sure he did these. Did the Walking Liberty. Celebrated these people. I'm sure these guys, you dig them their past and they're going to be white power all the way. That's right. That's Republicans. Why did the Republicans make propaganda, Andrew Bright? Burt Bright? I don't know. I just don't know. But we know we couldn't have had the nude golfer without Weinman, or the at least one known hey, if those guys ever are going to put one of those, death sentences on me, I'm going to say you got to get the guys in. You got to get that off of Washington before you come after me. Your jihads, go look somewhere else if you're going to put a fatwa on me, just because I'm not as famous as the guy who made the Mercury Dime. But nobody's fatwaing anybody else that's keeping that up. This should be an outrage. But then again, nobody's outraged about, paying more money in a capitalistic country to have all your food marked kosher. You're cool with that. Let's pay more to have Jews inspect corn. What? Corn? That's not even on the list. Hey, who cares? We'll pay more because we don't want to insult the Jews and they need money. Well, I need money too. Who doesn't, We need money that's good in heaven. This guy Wyman, he started at 15? Wow. Man, they picked him right out of the hat, and you're going to be good. Good enough to get away with what in the world is this? 14-year-old girl who hid her story for 8 years that she was only... Now, I'm getting 13 on some websites, 14 on the others. But I can't, what was did I close out? I mean, we got that guy in Germany now doing this. Oh, something about, there's a union people, and they were working for Disney, and he was hiring communists because they didn't like unions, and then they did like unions, and and then when they finally, the one guy that was the facilitator between Disney and the commies, when he was making Snow White, he brought in a girl, and he married her. When he met her when he was 13, I think married her when he was 14, and she did all the modeling. You dig a little deeper, and these guys that were like in his first animators hired right out of school and stuff like that, I guess they were like a fraternity and stuff, and get together and, hire nudes to do painting, to say they were practicing their arts and skills. And, I guess Walt would make a special club for them, and this was their goddess, the Columbia and Liberty. They are two different people, and it all started changing back when? Yeah, everything's brand new. This guy just sold something before World War I, and they said, that looks good enough for me. Now he's Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam is everywhere. Thank you, rewritten history. Pan-Africanism. That's, to me, it's not just enough to be like, I'm for the lost and now found, black and brown, and this and that, and it's all that they're from Africa. Get them back to Africa. No, they were, they're people of color all over the world. They're the lost tribes. They're the ones we've got to provoke to jealousy. That's why they were getting rubbed out. A lot of this is will come back to their own people turned on them. They turned on God. They turned their back on God. And now they're needing, someone like me to provoke them to jealousy, because the true seed of God will come back. That God will have a people to glorify his Son, and I am proud to be among that number. But all of the Pan-Africanism is a hoax too, because they didn't just come from Africa, it's everywhere. When they got spread out from the Tower of Babel and the languages were confused, how much of a stretch of the imagination is it that they were confused along genetic lines where they'd be some this color, some that color, this color, but there could always be a crossover? And come on, it didn't start in Africa. I'm going to definitely have to do a part 2, because I was going to get after something. Chuck, I don't think, Chuck, you want to hold people up, and I know you're talking to not me, but to people like me that have some, yes, we want to stick with Joel 2:28 and what they said, and put those timestamps on them and hold him to it. And yes, he's hearing more of it, and you're going to hear more of it, because we want to know why you people that are waiting on Armageddon discount the Bible and insult people that are saying, wait, we're trying to read it literally. You're gaslighting. We'll save that one. What else is coming up? We have to get over, people like this guy. People want to say, I can't be a prophet. They don't know what a prophet is. A prophet is somebody who holds up Scripture. I've never claimed to speak Scripture or even speak in tongues. And I need to start praying for more people to healing and stuff like that, but not in a Benny Hinn way. Just to, oh God, heal them. Let them know that we should pray for our food all the time and stuff. But that, they base everything on something they planned from the 1880s to reinstitute Israel in 1948 and then say we've captured Jerusalem in 1968. Well, that's really not that long ago. What's it like, the summer of love, right? We have to study these things, people, and we will. We're going to have to work together to not, to understand. We're going to get to the bottom. Why did the Negro Academy only operate from 1897 to 1928? And my goodness, I think I have some documentation that in that time period, they gave away $4 million to help people. And it was the opposite of the Booker T. Washington approach of, well, let's just teach them how to, to fix cars. That's all we're good for anyway. Or teach us how to farm, a vocational school. The American Negro Academy, which was big, they were studying, logic, the liberal arts, arithmetic, reason, and some of these people turned out to do very well for themselves and were, if you read them now, pretty darn smart. And I'm just kind of that, the famous Webb de Bow, who he doesn't even look black. It's like the United States had the same laws as South Africa. One drop, you're black. It's outrageous. It was just, it's just completely, as they say, beyond the pale. And we just can't say, go into it. One side's all good, one side's all bad. Now, a lot of this judgment did happen because you guys are the descendants of the Israelites, the Hebrewites, and you're getting, you turned against God. There's a reason, and it doesn't justify what happened to you through the people. The God says we'll be judged on that too, because, you can't just get it set up to where, now we find out in history things like when Teddy Roosevelt, after somebody got assassinated, he came in, he gets to stooping to her, it's like, what, there's 167 black soldiers that are just about to retire? Let's accuse them of crimes and kick them out. Everything doesn't add up. What we know is that real Christians will not turn on each other and know that unless we forgive, we have no proof we are forgiven. Please do that whole subscribe thing. Come back, because we're going to be getting into the Berlin Conference, showing that, is also known as the Congo. They were going to divide Africa. And if I can, I'll pull back up those things that show that the first international, religious convention in the 1890s planned on bringing Israel online. And they did. Another, just probably the quickest example, would just to show you what I got when I did a search for the Berlin Conference 1885. There's, that looks like an interesting map. This, the depletion of the animals, and we, finding out we're supposed to be the people that were created to love the earth and protect the animals, but there's no lack of information. It's just a lack of people searching for it, I think. And nobody's tying it into, it's all a hoax and it's all a part of the big rewrite of history. we are going to agree, right, that the winners of the war will rewrite history if they can. Or actually, if they're the survivors who knew, hey, what just happened, I want power, let's take over. Something happened, we're not getting the truth. This all comes down to, you know, I got a call from, they want to change my doctor's appointment too, and it went back to the trouble I've had with the VA since I came here. I've had my, you know, since I won the constitutional case. I came here, went to the VA, got hassled, this and that, kept turning the other cheek until finally, you know, this happened and I realized I've got to start documenting these things. So I have documented it providentially, just like my name was put up there when it was doing the RT news. Providentially, a man that I knew when they, you know, my daughter helped me and my son was leaving and had, you know, near homeless. They tried to put me in a, you know, you must be mentally upset, Mr. Hughes. You know, and I was like, never heard that before. Nobody's ever said I had a mental problem. They kept going, and I ended up meeting a man named Todd Scott. And, you know, convinced him, no, look at my resume. We're doing this and that. I qualified for a HUD VASH and got ignored by the VA for that. Just ignored, and documented that. Have all the records of when I went in and talked to a nurse. All the nurse would have had to do in Grand Junction was call my doctor and let them know that I'm in Grand Junction and that, you know, my prescription can be picked up at the VA there. She wouldn't do it. She decided that I looked sketchy, was drug seeking, and decided that I didn't need to do anything. I needed a cooling off period for 3 weeks. And she just said, well, we'll set that appointment. I said, well, that's not really your decision as a nurse, you know. And I knew my rights. I said, and so she wouldn't budge. I ended up doing what I do. I got my records of the conversation, found out that she had twisted a lot of things, lied about a lot of things, and even gone, you know, things like, you know, Mr. Hughes walked in smelling and reeking of tobacco as she was, you know, well, tell me about yourself, this and that. You know, do you have any guns? No, don't have any guns. You know, do you don't like guns? I said, well, I you know, I don't have guns. I have a knife collection and things like that. Oh, you collect knives? Yeah, I'm a knife collector. I've been collecting knives all my life. Okay, that turned into I'm a knife maniac. And what was the other? Well, let me think of the one that. This is the one that when you know, and I just don't want to dig out my records. Everything's cluttered in. I live in a bus. It's a big project to get out all these records. But when I dig them out, it'll show that everything I'm saying is true, that she twisted it. You know how I feel about fasting and praying, and that a nearly, you know, like going through a times of starve your body, and that's good. The way that is presented in my medical records, you know, going to my doctor is he's deluded about thinking that he'll live longer if he starves himself. And the same thing happened here in this one. So just, you know, supposed to see this much, that much. They've dropped the ball every little time. Not only am I doing what I'm trying to do to warn you on the wall, I'm doing the best I can to fight these people from throwing me in a mental institution and throwing away the key. Trying to prove that if they can do it to me, they're doing it to everybody. The newest place accused me of doing being a meth head, and want to ignore that now, want me to ignore it. So they've given, you know, I've communicated some of this and to some people, to all of it, to you guys. And here's the other thing. So, nope, I'm not sure when they've called to cancel that. When I thought my appointment was going to be, it's not. And here's just a portion of the conversation.
What I was going to say is, if you're interested in doing services up here, I know that you're currently under Dr. Morley's care. We only offer a different provider up here, Dr. Snodgrass. Maybe you can talk to your care manager when you go to this appointment with Morley and see if we can't look at getting you up here, if that would be your preference.
I don't know what I'm going to do with Dr. Morley and those guys when I talk to them and they talk to me, or even if they ever are. They have. You know, I'm supposed to meet with him every month. I've seen him 5 times in 2 years. It's always this. It's always canceled, and they're keeping me on the time-released medicines. And I've been on, I've been taking generic Adderall for 15 years about, and, I go on it 5 years, I go off it, and then come back, and then I never have had any trouble until I came to Colorado. And then all of a sudden it was like, you're a meth head seeker. And I'm a guy that, I'll show you my resume. I'm not. I'm the guy that designed warehouses for Learjet. I've never been addicted to anything. And they have me listed in their charts as meth head. And he treats me as meth head, and he only found out at my last appointment that I wasn't a meth head, and they did fire the girl that called me a meth head, but I'm still mad. And they're acting like nothing happened. They're acting like I should ignore everything. He told me, well, he's going forward like I was a meth head and I did, act out in the front desk, which he knows now I didn't, but I'm supposed to pretend like I did and ignore that. They called me a meth head. They treated me like a meth head for over a year before they realized I wasn't. What would you do if you were me, Jen?
I would definitely be very offended if I was being accused of something that was not accurate.
Absolutely.
You're right.
And it happened at Grand Junction, and they ignored it too. And they don't turn over their corrected notes. I've had Discovery. I've done that. They lie. And all this stuff about these Obama's laws are going to protect you and everything else, they do not. They laugh at you because they can, not because you're wrong.
Well, and I certainly want you to have a good experience with us. Here's the thing. Would you like me to reach out to the care manager to see if we can't get you an appointment to do what we would do is called a med to appointment.
What I would like you to do is, reach out to them and let them know that as soon as somebody takes this serious, I couldn't have had any more documented malpractice, people talking about my medical history that isn't in my medical history, making it up. I know all that's illegal, and I'm just waiting for them to figure it out and say, this guy really must be the Christian that he says he is and is turning the other cheek and is trying to help us and not go get a lawyer and wake people up and say, look, all I ever wanted to do was come out here, go to school, do this and that, and take my medicine, and now I'm living in a bus because they think I am a meth head.
Right.
And it's super wrong, and I'm supposed to act like when I go in there, he's doing me a favor by allowing me to see him again. He told me that.
Yeah. So do you want me to see if we can't get you with a different provider?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. I don't want to go there anymore. I didn't want to have to call them up on February 3rd when I was out of medicine and saying, I have studied it. I know that time-released medicine affects the C450 enzyme, and it is a very known problem in time-released medicines, and I didn't want it. And he still... It can't get more true than what I've been telling you all along, because I covered the C450 and its effects on Parkinson's and Alzheimer's before I knew that it was in the medicines that they give me. This is affecting everybody. And blame the victim. Blame the victim. Nepotism. How'd you get this job? How'd I get denied the HUD VASH? People don't want jury trials. These are the things I'm talking about. These are the things I need help with to spread the word. All right? I am going to break it off now and try to pick up on some of these things. I know I say that, and sometimes when I click off, it's hard to recover these topics. But I'm going to premiere this video, and I'm going to premiere that it's a hoax and that it is, here's a picture of Muhammad. We're all fake. Because a lot of times they can, if it's just like, yeah, I got one strike. There is that one thing they said, if you touch this topic and it's about who paid for certain people to go to a certain place, they said, you'll get a for sure strike. And I said, well, not if I, just handle it and say, here's the documentation. No, they give you a strike if you handle that topic. So we'll, and at least if this gets out, it'll get out one time on this Flat Earth Nation. And it is a Flat Earth Nation. I'll never tell you anything else because I have your best interest at heart. And I'm trying to document it. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho.